Hey everybody, welcome back to another very special episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And Ted, unfortunately, can't be here, but if Ted were here, you know what he'd be saying right now, Grant?
He'd be saying how epic our patrons are.
How epic our patrons are, right? And there's just over 12 of them, so that's unfortunate. But anyways, it's patrons like all you folks listening to the show that help keep the lights on for the show, and we really appreciate it, and we can't do it without you. So we would like to thank Daniel, David, Jason, Joseph, Justin, Kyle, Lewis, Mike, Dominic, Phil, Rob, Robert, Russ, and Sean. And we always have that string of Robs and Roberts right in the middle. And you know what? We love all of them. And Joseph always as a community supporter. So thank you, Joseph. And Joseph, you just happen to be with us tonight. So that is always pretty awesome. So thank you again for being a supporter, or patron of the show. We enjoy having you. And Joseph, you have your own podcast. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but thank you for being on the show, everybody. I don't know if everybody can see, but we have Joseph Forster from the Three's Company podcast. He's also a million moderators for a million different things. Plus, he has his own blog, like the LOTR deck testing blog there. So, Joseph, welcome.
Thanks. Hi.
And Mike, you can see, well, you can't see him, but he's here. Mike is also known as Wandering Took. He's our Canadian representing the group. How you doing, Mike?
Good. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks. And Shane was on an earlier episode of Card Talk, so we have Shane back to talk about this. So Shane, how you doing?
Good.
And of course, we have Grant's here to talk about how awesome Grimbjorn is. No, but just to give everybody an idea, this is going to be a slightly different Card Talk show. So normally we would all pick a card and talk about it, but I think we wanted to spend some time, and this was Grant's brainchild, is to spend some time talking about epic multiplayer and the gentlemen in front of you have all participated in the online epic multiplayer that was organized mainly,
Can
I
you
guess.
see the dead look in our eyes?
Yeah. So maybe Joseph, you were going to talk about it. So can you provide a little bit of maybe information about what epic multiplayer is for the audience, so that they have an idea? Because there are probably some people out there that don't know that this game format even exists.
Sure. Yeah, it's a alternate game format that there are two quests that you can use it with, where you can link three staging areas together. So three separate games together, and they all interact with each other in some way. So you can play it with between 3 and 12 players. So 3 simultaneous games all interact. Same quest, but you have different variations at each staging area. In a nutshell.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild because like you defeat, like you can now rulesy really quick. Like there's no unique conflicts from staging area to staging area. So if somebody's running tactics AON in area A, there can be a tactics AON in area B, right? All that stuff. Yeah. And so, so Grant, why don't you talk a little bit about how this all came to be in terms of the epic multiplayer stuff? Like what was going through your mind when you signed up for it, or like what kind of sadomasochistic ideas were you thinking? like what's happening here?
Right. Well, Samuel Shreve contacted us about a week before we were due to go on and play Attack on Guldur for a second time, after already witnessing a crushing defeat the lads had the first time round. And it was like, yeah, sure, why not? Didn't think much about it. And then when I actually sat down and thought about it, it was like, what have I just signed up for? And throughout the week, we managed to build decks that complemented each other. Joseph did a lot of deck testing, finding out how things worked.
Is that a nod of no, or like you're just like super? Joseph, what was that?
That was my eyeballs spinning from trying to play 4 decks once.
I did quite a bit of deck testing with Samuel to get my deck to where I was comfortable with it. Then I'd pass it on to Joseph to test, and then eventually when Friday came around, it was like, this is going to be a long night.
Yeah. So let me interrupt you there. So Grant and Joseph, you guys were in the same 4-player area. Shane, did you go through all this same amount of testing with the group that you were in?
They did. I was in a little bit of the testing, but a majority of it was Joe, and I think Bob contributed quite a bit too.
When you say Joe, is it Joseph here, or was it some other Joe?
Sorry. Purple Wizard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They did a ton of work, but it was mostly minor tweaks for us. Like our first game went pretty well. And it was just kind of like learning, getting familiar with the deck, I think. Mm-hmm. He and I sat down with the Noldor deck and with the lore deck in our group and just kind of tinkered with it and kind of theoried it. But Joe and Bob put in a ton of work for our team.
And what about you, Mike? How did, because I think we're representing all the 3 different, I don't know what they call it in Epic Multiplayer, the 3 different regions, areas, staging areas. I don't know, but
they're officially teams.
Okay, teams. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So how about for you with the 3rd team?
Yeah, I did a lot of testing early on with before the first game, and then I had to drop off for a little bit, and we had a bit of a change in lineup. But Eric, Triton Wreck, Prancing Pony, and Samuel, and actually Joe with the Purple Wizard, they really put in a lot of effort tweaking the decks at the end. And even though the loss in the first game, I believe that was on Joseph's table where the loss ultimately happened, we still, even though our board state was okay, like we looked at it and said, you know what? Even had they not lost, we were going to be in rough shape pretty soon. So it was a combination of tweaking our deck and tweaking our strategy a little bit. Oh yeah, it was. Our threats were too high. Like we knew that. We underestimated this quest. We can only hold out so long.
Definitely. Yeah.
Have you guys played that quest like solo or with one team, through? Like it's a whole different beast when you're playing Epic Multiplayer is what I'm getting at, I guess. So Joseph, what's your feeling on that difference if you've played it different styles, different ways?
So we're specifically talking about Dol Guldur.
Yeah.
I'm going to rant about this on our podcast when it comes out in another week or so. Okay. We just did a whole segment on it, and I get pretty worked up. But
okay.
I played it solo. I played it 2-player. I played it 4-player. I played it 12-player. I played it 9-player. Okay. All different combinations. Solo, it is this particular. I like the other epic multiplayer one better, the Siege of Numenos. This one tends to be really punishing. There's all sorts of bad things that happen to you that you can't control, and you can't control which bad thing happens to you. And one of those bad things is you lose your entire hand, except for 1 card, and that shuts down so many decks that it's just not even fun to try to play, in my opinion, with the vast majority of my decks. So the only deck I've ever beat it with solo is the Noldor deck because of Aristor.
Right. Because as soon as you get that, your Aristor doesn't care about that stuff, right? Well, yeah. I mean, you know what I mean. And
so the epic multiplayer is better because you have the potential to control what bad thing happens to you rather than just getting a random one of the 3 that you aren't addressing, right? In my opinion.
And Mike, how do you what's your take on that? Have you played it in multiple? Have you played it?
I have not.
Okay.
I didn't have the guts, first of all. That's the tough one. We stream all the time, and for those that have seen the show, we don't always bring the best or most well-tested decks. So I'm not a power gamer at the best of times, so coming up against probably the hardest quest in the pool solo is that's not something I've taken on yet. But also, I feel like half the fun is in multiplayer with this one, and I would sooner have 3 groups of 2 people than have a 4-player game solo.
Shane, you're relatively new to Lord of the Rings compared to
Yeah.
Mike and Joseph, who've been around. Now, Joseph, we've had you on the show, and I know that you've been around since pretty much the beginning of the game, right? Like you,
More or less, yeah.
And I don't know you as well, Mike, but I know that you've been around the community forever and ever. Did you get in right from the very beginning?
No, I got in towards the end of the Dwarf cycle,
Okay.
so about, what was that, a year and a half or so?
Okay.
It's pretty early.
So yeah, so you have 7.5 years, 8 years of Lord of the Rings. So Shane, coming from a guy who's been in the game for maybe 6 months or so, how does this experience compare to, just a, typical game? Like what's the feel that you get?
Well, I had played some of the Saga quests, and I was doing a progression with a friend. We got up to Foundations of Stone,
Mm-hmm.
and then I jumped into these ones. Now, I like to think I have pretty good game sense. So when I signed up for this, I've been playing games for a long time, a lot of cards, turned a lot of them sideways, and then we get to Siege, and like Grant said, what did I sign up for? That didn't hit me until like the first turn that we played Siege, and I realized this is a very different animal. I don't even know what to compare it to in terms of like other games because of the scale and the complexity of it. So it was a lot to take in, and a lot of it was the first few turns was just me doing the game normally and trying to get my feet under me because it's so drastically different, and you have to rely on 8 other players, and hoping that things are going well for them, but you don't have time to check in because you've got your own problem. But I love the scale of it. I think it's great. Like that, with all that awareness aside, I loved it.
And let me just follow up with that. Is that, and this is for everybody, but I'll still start with Shane. I'll still start with Shane.
Please don't.
Right. It's a good thing that this is digital. Is that I'll say. Now I've lost my question. It was all related, but like, do you enjoy because it's a cooperative game? Is it the same as maybe playing 4-player, like in terms of the cooperativeness of it, or is it different? Or you know what I'm saying? Like, because many of us have played 4-player games in this, and it's great fun. It's a cooperative game, so we're all just having fun. And Joseph and I played 4-player at Con of the Rings, and we had a great time playing that. I mean, seems like 12 people now. Like, is there what's the feel in terms of difference for 4 versus 12, especially for a rookie? And then don't worry, Joseph and Mike and Grant, I'm getting to you too.
Honestly, it's a scaled up version of one of the major selling points of the game. So if the idea of the game got me into it, like I can sit down with 3 of my friends and escape from Dol Guldur or whatever, then saying I can sit down with 11 friends and play this game seems like a natural progression.
My problem is I don't have 11 friends.
Well,
I sure as hell don't have 11 friends that like this game.
Well, thanks to the internet, I do.
Right. All right. Mike, what's your take on this whole thing idea of 4 versus 12?
Oh, it's fascinating, and part of my view is based on how I play the game. I have all the cards, and I play that solo at home because no one else around me plays this game physically. And all my multiplayer stuff is online. So for me, the difference is like having a group of friends in your living room playing the game versus being at a convention in a sense, because you're playing with the same group of people. Then every so many minutes, you're, oh, what did you do? What happened to you guys? And it's exciting, and it makes you feel like part of something bigger, and that's where I think it really shines.
Yeah, Grant, what's your take on epic multiplayer versus just multiplayer?
Well, for someone who has never played epic multiplayer before that Friday when I jumped into Attack on Guldur, it was a big change. And I've got to say, I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was probably one of the hardest things I've played, but it went astronomically well. And I've made
and that Grimbjorn deck was awesome, right?
Not yet.
Oh wait, sorry.
It's just the fact of how accessible all the other players were to begin with. Just playing the game, everybody was on the same goal, and it made things so much easier to jump in. I mean, I only knew really from my group, I only knew Joseph and Ryan, and I played a few games with Ryan, and it just went so smoothly because everybody had the same goal in mind.
Yeah. Joseph, the same question, different take though. How do you think that this manages, like in terms of experience? Do you think it's something that, you know, a new person? Shane's a little bit different because Shane's been playing. Shane's a little bit different, right? No, but no, but like Shane's a little bit different because he's been around cards and kind of gets it. His, you know, he gets the mechanics of this stuff. So like dumping him into something like epic multiplayer, like so going is probably okay, but like, is this something that you want to do with your play group when you have 3 or 4 new people to play, or is this not? Like, I mean, I guess if you're playing with 3 or 4 new people, you're probably building decks for all of them, and you have a lot of work to do. But I know you have a pretty active play group up where you are, right? So, you know, I mean,
I think I've run it a couple times locally with whoever wants to show up. And the first fellowship event where this quest came out, it was a little rough. Some people a little frustrated. People came with their core set decks, and it just was not kind to them. So I think it was uniquely perfect for the online version of this, where the people who really wanted to do this to themselves had an opportunity to do it. So no, don't give this to your newbie core set players. It will hurt. Especially 12 player.
I can imagine.
Otherwise, they'll just lose. They'll make the whole group lose, and then they'll feel bad.
What were you saying, Shane?
I can imagine telling the whole table with my core set deck, don't worry, guys, I've got a sneak attack Gandalf. This turns in the bag. We're good.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the specifics. So, I mean, you guys, when you played, well, before we talk about the actual playing and how that all worked out, how do you guys prefer to play? Some people prefer to play online. Mike, when you were talking, you were saying that, you know, you play multiplayer online, but you have the live cards in your house. So, I mean, that's 2 obviously different modes of playing. So when you play this, do you prefer to play live or online, Mike?
I always prefer physical copies because I'm a very tactile person, and I love being able to see someone's face while I'm playing with them and joke around. The online is just, it's necessity. I have friends from all over the place. Yeah, exactly. Am I playing solo because no one else is around me that can play, or am I having fun online?
Right. Yeah. Is that, do you think that that's pretty much the way it is, Joseph? Is that, like, do you prefer the cards or do you prefer online? Because you and Mr. Underhill have a pretty vibrant online footprint in terms of what you play. So, I mean, do you ever pull out the physical cards? I just don't know.
Yeah, I do. I have a local play group that.
Oh, right. We talked about the
before
local
the
play
world
group.
collapsed, we meet every week,
Uh-huh.
and we'll again eventually one of these days. But yeah, I get my cards out all the time. I sold all my clothes and I put up a table in my closet and I have them out there permanently.
Fortunately, I can show you guys. Like, this is my whole collection right here behind this hat here. This is everything. There's a little table and it goes from there all the way down. So, I mean,
because it's a major commitment to get everything out. So if I can just have it out and sit down and play, that helps me get in games. But honestly, if I want to run a new deck, I will often do it on Octagon because of the reduced setup time. But if I'm going to play through a cycle or something and I can have a deck or a deck with a sideboard out with a set of quests I want to play, I'll do that physically.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about, I don't know. I feel like there was more to this behind the scenes than ever, because Octagon, really, you're playing with 4 people per room, right? And then you had a 5th person controlling the deck, right? So you had 5 people in the room, but then you have 3 different rooms representing the 3 different teams. And so how did all of that happen? Who knows how that happened? Because I have no idea. The only thing I was doing was watching Grant and Joseph and I guess Patrick and Ryan. So I was watching your room, Joseph and Grant, the whole time. But like behind the scenes, what was happening in order to make this simulate more of the live gameplay? Who's going to talk about what happened?
To answer that?
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? I don't even know.
I can take that.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Because I'm running the server actually, so I know all the secret rooms. Which, by the way, it's not exclusive. If people want to run a multiplayer game, by all means, just message me on Discord.
Okay.
I know Joe has some more things planned, but effectively, we have the server is open to anybody, and we have roles for players. And players have special status in which they can see certain channels, more to keep the discussion really tight and centered. So each team had their own channel that they would communicate on, share decks, discuss strategy. Each team had their own voice chat, which people were allowed to join and listen to. And in addition, there was a command post. It was an emergency back channel for if anything ever went wrong, or it's also where we all met up in between rounds to discuss how the groups are going to share the spoils of whatever we got in that round.
Okay.
Or pain.
Or pain. Oh man. Okay, so I mean, it sounds like, so it was a combination because, Mike, you're a Twitcher and Mr. Underhill was a well, it was Twitch, right? And it was on Twitch channel was what was live streaming it on your Twitch channel, and then Joseph's group, Grant's group, was all doing it through YouTube, and so then I guess all of the discussion was happening through Discord. Is that what you were saying when you said you're in charge of the server?
Yeah, primarily the communication went through the Discord server.
Okay, and so the teams themselves couldn't talk to other teams except in that when they went to that command room, right?
It's not that they couldn't. I mean, theoretically, you could have jumped rooms to say hi, and I know a couple people did before the game. But there's so much going on. They're so focused. It was, while I was gone at the command post, it was one representative from each team that went to advocate for their group or say what they had to give. And everyone else was just busy strategizing. Right.
So
I had both other streams up, heckling a little bit in the comments. But
yeah, I appreciated that 30 progress joke you had on the first round.
But then it came true.
That's self-actualization.
Progress.
Yeah.
And we didn't believe you when it
Power
happened.
of positive thinking.
So let me ask the general question then. What goes into planning a trip to try to beat Dol Guldur? Oh, well, wait, while you're formulating your responses, Grant, tell us what this represents in the lore of the book, Attack on Dol Guldur.
Oh, this represents Gladriel and the final destruction of the fort of Dol Guldur before they headed off to the Undying Lands.
So this is at the very end of the LOTR saga.
It's the end of Lord of the final chapters of Lord of the Rings. There is more to the mythos or lore that happens afterwards, that Aragorn and the forming of the Fourth Age. But this is like the end of Galadriel's time in Middle Earth.
Okay. So it's the elves going to destroy the thing. So
it's the final destruction of Dol Guldur.
Of Dol Guldur in the forest of Mirkwood, I guess. So
yeah.
So what goes into organizing how to beat this quest? Because this quest is brutal, right? Like, can I say that this quest is brutal? Is that a legitimate characterization of this?
It was easy.
I think that's all right. Yeah,
it's all right. Joseph, brutal, is that a good characterization of it?
Any player counts brutal, but for it becomes especially potent.
Especially potent. I appreciate the words that you use. So what goes into planning an assault on Dol Guldur? So I don't even know who wants to start. How does that even begin? What do you start with in terms of decks? What do you throw out right at the beginning? Do you bring your squirrely whirly deck and you're like, I'm just going to try this? Joseph, you look like you were going to say something to this.
Somebody else can take crack first.
For a bit of perspective, for Siege of Anuminos, they allowed me to play my 5 dwarves.
Okay.
And then for Attack on Dol Guldur, when I signed up, it was pretty clear that the sentiment was, do not bring those dwarves.
So,
which is okay. I get it.
A dwarf swarm, which was pretty popular in the first couple of cycles, and it's still a pretty powerful deck, is one that you weren't going to weren't asked to bring, right? Leave that at home. Yeah. Mike, what do you do to get ready for, what kind of decks do you bring? Do you always do you have to bring a location control deck and then a fighting deck and a defending deck? What goes into this? Yeah.
You have to have the right answers. And I think one of the reasons this wasn't well liked at the cons is because nobody knew what they were getting into. And this punishes everything you think is good. I don't remember who said it, but someone said it on the stream. This punishes every deck you think is good, which is every deck that someone brings to a con.
Pretty much punishes every deck. Period.
Yeah. So the enemies are not that bad. There's some big ones, but it's not something worse than we've ever seen before. It's a combination of backbreaking treacheries and locations that you can't get rid of that hurt everything that they hurt everything that tries that you every strategy where you try to mitigate what the encounter deck is doing to you, those locations will block. So what do you bring? You bring not just location management, but very targeted tech for these locations, because just to go into the mechanics, a lot of these locations you cannot travel to unless you are at a very specific quest stage.
Right.
Which nobody can be at for the first few rounds. And then eventually you're bartering with the other groups at the table. Oh, can I go to this stage so I can go and clear these locations? Or, oh, you need it more than me. Okay, we'll suffer it. So any way you can cheat the system is a good thing to bring.
You can't travel, nor can you put progress on them. In this
yes, that's right. That's right.
More of a tracker standard brute force.
So what that's what so what are some of the specific decks that ended up being successful? What was the success? Maybe start before that. What was the failure the time before on attack from Dol Guldur? What was the, where did that failure lie and how did you improve it?
Well, that was my staging area. The first time we failed. Partly, any set of decks can potentially fail from a nasty string of treacheries. Like there's a card that makes the highest engagement cost enemy attack from the staging area. There's a shadow that can make him attack again. Every time one of those enemies attacks, they have an ability that triggers, which can just chain and wipe out the best of boards. So anything can fail. But we failed in that first attempt, mostly because we didn't work hard enough setting up. We actually never played all together, which it's hard to get 4 people from across the world to sit down and play long 4-player game before they actually sit down and play it for real. So we failed because we didn't have enough location management, basically, I would say. We had some good answers for combat, but again, the first turn, we got that treachery that shadowed into another attack, and we lost the first turn before the first turn was over. It was incredible. So we lost twice. But yeah, if you don't manage locations, you basically can't play the game. Each one of those locations says you can't do this. And if they're all out, not only can you not play the game, but you're seeing all the other cards that are very painful too, very quickly in succession. All the treacherous enemies start to cycle faster. So we didn't manage the staging area, and it comboed and killed us.
Yep. What was your experience with it, Shane, the first time you played? Were you guys stuck, or were you doing pretty good? Or was it only Grant and Joseph that screwed you over? Just kidding.
Well, to be fair, I wasn't there the first time, so...
Oh, okay.
Oh, so just Joseph is the bait here?
Yeah. Poor Joseph.
Okay,
Joseph's never coming back on the show, and we lost a patron. Okay, I got it.
Similar to what Michael said earlier is in the game that we lost, all of us were kind of plinking along. We felt like we were in good shape, but it was a very thin margin. So after the first game, we took a lot of notes and found common texts that we could share between multiple decks to make sure we had them for the second time, which is what made it go so smoothly. The good example in our fellowship is the Thrower's Map and Reforged. So we could just keep doing it to get all those bad locations out and keep doing our thing. But the first one, like I said, it felt like a thin margin, but we were succeeding. But one bad flip was probably going to sink our ship.
Is the quest fair, Grant? What do you think? Is it fair to the players? Like, I mean, you know that there's quests that are very, very challenging, but you feel like they're fair. Is this one of those that's super challenging but fair, or is it super challenging Escape from Dol Guldur? Which is funny because
I think it's in the middle. I think it's not exactly over the top punishing, but it's not quite fair to the players. I think it's somewhere in between.
Mike, I saw you starting to say something. What were you going to say?
Fair. Oh yeah, it's not fair to surprise a group with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got
it.
you.
It is the way we played it. It was fair, and in that sense, I'm glad the quest exists. I don't think the release was fair.
Okay. You don't argue with the quest. You argue in the way that the quest was released and the place that it was released.
They should have given those 4 months notice.
Right. I mean, you guys, so the first week that you played Assault on Dol Guldur, you lost, and then you came back to it 1 week later. What really happened in that 1 week? 2 weeks later? Is that what you're saying, Joseph?
2 weeks later.
2 weeks later. So what happened in those 2 weeks? Like, were you solid? Like, it's like work, sleep, eat, tech for Escape from Dol Guldur?
Sleep.
Yeah. Well, I know that you
for
don't
Joseph,
sleep.
definitely.
Yeah. Like,
I played it quite a few times. The first week was just like, I don't want to see it again. And then I got back to work in the second week. And yeah, it's a couple late nights. I played with Samuel Onenson a couple games. He's a night owl like me, so he's able to help us just by running some decks with me. So I played it probably 3 or 4 times. I played it 3-player with 4 decks. Keep tweaking and then trying to communicate with 4 people all the time, 4 different time zones is very difficult. And everyone except me changed their deck from the first time to the second time at different points. So it was very difficult to make sure.
Were you trying to make a statement? You're like, I know my deck works. I know that I can do this. I am not going to be the reason.
No, but I was the willpower.
Right.
And I know I could do that, so I just stuck with it.
Right. Do you find that when you play, that when you had to play this, that you had to have certain rules like the willpower, like when you play multiplayer, typically, I mean, I'm not a multiplayer expert. Anybody who knows me knows that I don't. But I mean, do you find that it's best to have somebody be the willpower deck, somebody be the combat deck, somebody be the tricks deck, and somebody be the defense deck? Or is that not, is everything out the window? You know, like, I guess my question is coming from the point of view of somebody who's going to go in and play this in a serious way, multiplayer. Like, do you just throw it all? Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I actually think that this quest is more amenable to delegating roles like that than most, because unlike most of the brutal quests, this does not have a card that blanks text boxes, which means Sentinel will always work, ranged will always work.
If they can ready.
If they can ready. But yes.
Yeah.
But you never have that worry. Like, what was the first one we played has that text box blanking. So your quester could just be out of luck. Like, everyone has to have an answer in that quest, whereas in Guldur, you can afford to specialize more.
It's actually kind of good to specialize because all the bosses have different effects and they actually interact with different decks differently. So if you're playing a 3 Hunters deck, you take that spider that discards ally and then it doesn't do anything.
Yep.
So if you specialize a little bit, you can answer the encounter deck a little better. But everybody needs a defender too, or a chump at some point,
or a Haldir.
Yeah. We ended up using Haldir. The first time we didn't use we did use Haldir, and he didn't work very good because it didn't have enough allies. So he kept being ready, and then the treachery would exhaust him.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, that was... I got away with a lot of... I'll engage that, and then Haldir shoots it for me. So I get a card out of it because I'm playing Pippin, and it was a pretty good deal.
Were you playing the Victory Display deck?
Yeah, that was me.
That looked like it was...
Oh, that was bonkers.
Work by the end of the...
Yeah, it was a ton of fun, and Bob had my back the entire time, so... When it's like, who can take it? Well, I'll take it, no problem, because I don't have to actually fight it, but it can stand over here for a second.
Yeah.
That was
I don't know anything about it.
that was basically my deck in the entire game. I'll just take it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, send it my way. What's the worst that could happen? I draw a card? Great.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of stuff that had to go into this whole, like, beating it, like, first of all, I think it's a technological marvel. So Mike, if you have a whole bunch to go into this, that's phenomenal. You know, just the coordination that way, and then all the deck teching that you guys did. Like, what is there a moment that anybody had in there that they were like, this was phenomenal? Like do you remember one of those crazy moments that you had, like, for the whole thing? Shane, I saw you starting to breathe something. So
I was just kind of like reflecting on the games as a whole, and I feel like it was something that I like signed my name on, and then along with, oh no, I'm about to get my entire board deleted. Every turn it didn't happen, I was like, we did it. That was awesome. I was like enjoying it.
Sense of relief with every breath you get to take.
Yeah. So every turn I was alive was like the greatest thing, my greatest time playing the game ever.
How about you, Mike? Was there a moment in the game that you ended up winning that you were like, okay, this was awesome?
There were small moments that that gave me that feeling for sure. Because of the level of coordination, the decks interacted a lot more with each other. We were playing attachments on each other all the time. There was a lot of redundant attachments, and we were just, you drew a card and it wasn't even, is this good for me? It's, who's this best on? Mm-hmm. And there were some fun plays. In the game that we ultimately lost, I played an Erebor toy maker because I had the resources, and the guy next to me was playing a 300s deck and dropped off his ancestral armor for a discount of 2. So things like that. We had Eomer with Herogrim, and unfortunately Eomer can't take, or it was leadership Eomer, and unfortunately he can't take the Silver Circlet, but Galadriel can, and she can give him his willpower. So little tricks like that. That it was a level I'm not used to.
Right.
That level of coordination.
Right. How about you, Grant? With you and your amazing Grimbjorn deck, was there any moments that you had?
I think it was just the entire game. I remember when Ryan went off to the command post, I was sitting talking to Joseph and Patrick, and it was like, well, we survived another turn. How amazing was that? The fact I saw how bad each group took their loss the first time. Like, each quest, end of each turn, there was some dramatic change to the board. And this time, it was like a completely different scenario where we pretty much cleared the board by turn 3, I think it was, for our group. We had no enemies engaged by the end of that turn. And we just started piling on the resources, piling on the progress onto the Lorien, the power of Lorien. And then 33 progress later, we took the power, we took the host, and it was just a case of, right, okay, now what?
And then by the next turn, there was 24 threat in that staging area.
Yeah.
Guldur.
Oh, you're so cute, Guldur, with your little threat things. I mean, it seems like there was a tale of 2 different quests, right? Like the first time you played it, seems like it just kind of fell apart, but it seems like the second time you played, was there that much of a despair? Like, did you really tech your decks that much and made it that much different? Like, how, I don't know, it just seems like the second one, Joseph, I'm not trying to say this crazy, I'm saying this true, like it seems like it was as smooth sailing as it could be for Dol Guldur the second time you played it. It's like, yeah, it was hard, but you were managing to stay at top. There wasn't a single turn that you didn't quest successfully. Like, you were always making progress on the host of one. Like, it was always happening. So,
well, we did change out 3 entire decks, so there was a lot of change.
Okay. Okay. And
I think, honestly, the key that was most essential for us was getting locations out of staging area, and there's only like 2 or 3 cards that'll do that. So we just had to load our decks with that, and then because we did that, we could also cancel treacheries, and that was the biggest difference for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So Strider's Path and Thor's Key, Thor's Map.
Strider's Path. Is that core set, or is that just Shadows of Mirkwood?
I think it's Hunt for Gollum.
Yeah, it's got to be. We just did a show on Strider's Path. I forget exactly. Maybe I think you're right, Mike. Man, how about in your room? Was there a huge difference, Mike?
There was
what you ran in the first time and the second time.
Not a huge difference, just a lot of deck tweaking. We definitely doubled down on some of the strategies that worked. We didn't do the reforged Thor's Map strategy, but we did have some Thor's Map, and we had a lot of Heirs of Elendil and Strider's Path. And we doubled down on the threat reduction too, because that's the other thing. You look at those 4 horrible locations, and one of them nerfs treachery cancellation, one nerfs healing, one adds a lot of threat to the staging area, nerfing your events, and then one of them just limits your threat reduction. And that's the weenie one that nobody cares about. And then that's what would have killed us had Joseph's group not died before us in the first game. So
We could have held on for
basically saved up.
So you would have died. That would have been good.
Yeah, like we saved up. We saved up all of a lot of our cancellation, and then in one turn, just boom, knocked out 3 or 4 locations, heirs of Elendil, and then threw out a bunch of secret vigils to reduce our threat, so we didn't have to deal with anything the rest of the game.
It's crazy to just think about it. You know, like Shane, this has got to be such a like almost a whiplash, neck breaking thing that, you know, you go for, like, you know, some of us older veterans of the game, you know, can expect some of this. And then, you know, like I said, for a new guy coming in, you know, like this got to just be neck breaking, right?
It's still pretty functional, but the coming out of the Dwarven cycle with the dwarves and a Dane partner deck, which is like, you know, like putting bumpers on the lane in bowling. Things were pretty nice. And like I said, I've played some of the Saga ones. Like one of my favorite quests is the Breaking of Isengard, which has a lot of triggers to keep track of, and it's a ton of fun. It was like smashing everything together all at once that I'd ever seen in the game, and then said, "Here you go, every turn."
All the bad stuff every turn.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a Master's Malice with Sleeping Sentry with you know, like just
Which is cool that they gave me the victory display deck, because I would play Out of the Shadows and I would look at the 5 cards and I'd say, all right, that looks awful. Let's not let that happen, and put it aside. So using my my fear of getting smashed by treacheries, I was able to make good decisions with my team.
That's funny. Now, Shane, did you did not make your own deck for this, right? Like, is that, and you were okay with that? Like,
yeah, I understood, like, playing multiplayer, that my role is to play well and do what the team needs.
okay.
So I did that.
You did that. You both played well, and did what the team needs. So that's really good.
Right. The deck was built. I'm really sorry. I actually don't remember who built the deck, but we started tweaking it, and from there, I mean, we didn't change too much about it. I think if you look on the RigsDB page, you'll see the original deck.
Okay. And who built all your decks, Joseph? Not all your decks, but like, were they just people coming in, or did you say, listen, guys, you have to build, you had your Noldor deck, which the community loves that deck. That deck is amazing. You tweak that a little bit, and then like, did you say, listen, guys, Grant, you have to bring your amazing Grimbeorn deck, and then, you know, Patrick, you have to do this? Or were you just like saying, hey, you just need to include these cards and do it this? Like, how did it work? Let me say it that way.
Saying, I would play this. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna play this, okay, and I would try it, and hey, he's playing this, he's playing that. Take this out. It was just herding cats, really. I had a couple ideas I suggested, and then I tweaked decks here and there, and Onidson did as well. Gave paragraphs of feedback
that nobody followed, right? Now you know what it's like to be a teacher. I'm a teacher. I give paragraphs and paragraphs of all this feedback, and nobody ever listens. Like, great, whatever. Still
well, I don't know if they got the feedback or not, but they used the version that I suggested. So
still gonna bring Spirit Pippin.
Nope, Spirit Pippin.
No, we bring Lore Pippin in this household.
Right.
And then Ryan was going to use a Grimbeorn or a Beorn deck, which was really good for the early game, which you really need. But then I had the idea we should try to get Legolas in there just for late turn progress dumping, which is quite a good tech for this quest.
Right.
And Legolas was on card draw, so he just dumped his whole deck and in about 3 minutes made a deck he called Plain Flower Cookie Cutters, just a deck of good stuff. Like, no inspiration, just Spirit Varagond, Eowyn, Haldir, and Test of Will, and stuff like that.
Right, just a whole bunch of things that you need to make life easier for everybody to run, right?
Just glue deck, yeah.
Right.
So
put it all the best cards in one deck.
all the highest rated cards on RingsDB, and he wasn't able to spend very much time on that, preparing for that second run. So And I made a few suggestions after playing a couple times with it. But yeah, so it was a wide variety of preparation techniques.
How about with you, Mike? Was there I don't know, what's your deck building? What was that like?
For my part, I was tweaking an existing deck with some of my old favorites. In our first multiplayer run, I was just running the encounter deck, and we had a Baragon deck that was loaded up with all of the what's that attachment where you can cancel damage if you're spirit?
The mithril shirt.
No, the livery, yeah. And we had that and Blood of Numenor and a few other things. They just made this tanky Baragon, and that didn't work so much in a quest that can prevent you from readying. So I took that Baragon, and I really like Galadriel. So it was a combination of what's on the table and what needs to be done. So we had our attackers already there. We had, okay, Baragon's a good defender. I'll take him. And what else is spirit? So we can get a big spirit board running.
See, spirit Pippin.
I went with Galadriel because,
man.
because of leadership armor. Leadership armor sealed the deal. And then I just needed, we needed willpower for this one. So I thought Outlands because, well,
right.
It's not just because they're Outlands, but because we needed someone who could tank damage. One hit questers are not good in this quest.
Right.
So how do you do that in Spirit? Well, you throw in a lore hero and put in some Anfilis herdsmen with your Aether swordsman.
Right.
And as it turns out, Furiel is a very good include in this quest.
Yeah.
And was she running every table?
Yeah, she was at our table.
Yeah, I think she was pretty much on every table, I think.
I don't know if Shane, you remember.
We did not have Furiel.
Also, 2 out of 3 in.
Was Barivor at every table? I think she might have been.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think Barivor was.
Oh yeah, she was
clutch a lot.
Corset.
I was gonna say corset. Yeah, you just you draw 2 cards.
I really have to credit Samuel Onidson and Joe with Purple Wizard with really tweaking our decks. They put a lot of effort really powering those decks up, taking them to the next level.
Yeah, Joe was really committed to making sure everybody had everything they needed, and that we were going to make it the second time.
He probably put, I don't know, 80 hours in on this.
Easy.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
There's no Caleb Grace creation's gonna beat me.
It felt like a personal vendetta on his part.
He was driven.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to admit, I did link him to the games that we played and won. I linked it to him and said we beat it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, let's go one more time around the table. We've been talking about this for an hour, and Joseph, you still haven't not smiled this whole episode yet about talking about. No, I'm just kidding. I could see that you're still suffering the repercussions of the assault on Dol Guldur.
I think we're different now.
Yeah, right.
Things are different now. You know, we're not the same players.
Yeah. So.
I've done it a lot of times, but I have a bit of a frustration with it because it just doesn't let you play the game unless you play a very specific way. So the second time, it was more like every time we did something that foiled it just was a vicious sense of satisfaction, really.
That's great.
I mean, if you can't get 12 of the most committed players in the world together and beat it, maybe it is too hard.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Right. So let me just go around the table one more time, and we'll just talk the proverbial table, the digital table, so to speak. And I'll let you guys give your final thoughts on the game, about Dol Guldur, about whatever you want, whether you're going to come back to it anytime soon. So Shane, you're the relative newbie here, so I'll let you go first. What are your final thoughts here on?
I won't need to revisit it anytime soon. That's for sure. um, Basically, like the sentiment that we had is it requires very narrow deck building and a lot of prior information, which is not good for a casual game, but is great for committed players. So I'd recommend it for people who are looking for a challenge, but I wouldn't recommend it for maybe the first 6 months of most normal players' careers. But I am glad I got the opportunity to do it. I had
6 months trying to escape from dual Guldur if you're playing pro.
Yeah.
You should add the day-night objective, right, Joseph? Mike, you guys can add the date to escape to attack on Guldur. It'd be great.
No.
Grant, I think you're the next newest player in the group. So what's your final takeaways about the
Well, I don't think about the newest, but it was definitely a experience. Would I go back to Attack on Guldur? Sure, if I got some good players to play alongside, I'm up for the challenge again. Like I say, it's all down to the players that you play with. Regardless, win or lose, if you've got a good team and you have fun, I don't mind a loss. But as far as this is definitely a quest that you have to tech against. It's not one that you can just go in blind. And thanks to Samuel and Joseph, I wasn't going in so blind that I didn't know what was going on. So the decks performed well, and everybody seemed to be enjoying themselves, which for me is the whole point of the game.
Okay, Michael, what's your? I guess Joseph, you got in at the very beginning, right? So it's Mike and then you. So, so Mike, what's your thoughts about the whole experience?
Epic multiplayer is a blast. Is an absolute blast, and I wholly recommend that you just be a part of it at some point. Try to find a way to make it happen.
Okay.
That said, play Numinous.
Yeah.
Get your feet wet, because you can take a bunch of fun, reasonable decks to Numinous and do reasonably well, have a lot of fun. You won't die and tank the whole group first round.
That almost did.
I was gonna say, is it? They don't do nightmares for PODs, but is it like Numinas is the regular normal mode, and then nightmare mode is Attack on Guldur?
I would say that's right. Yep, it's a good comparison. No, it's a blast to have happen, and it's still a little surreal that we actually were able to beat it. But for those that do want the challenge, hey, there's now 3 videos on YouTube, each with slightly different strategies on how to handle it. So
right,
it's out there for the masses.
It is. And Joseph, save the best for last. No.
My 2-hour rant on Three's Company, and you'll get everything.
Okay, I gotcha.
No, I really enjoyed doing it. We did 3 different games over this last COVID season, and the camaraderie is just really can't be beat. So really appreciate, even if the quest is slightly aggravating at times. Again, I would recommend Numinas as a more enjoyable experience, and any player count. But this one was quite the challenge to beat, and it was fun to actually be done with it. I do not think I'll be feeling the need to play it again unless something dramatic happens with the card pool that will give me something to deal with it better in the next 2 packs.
Right, 2 packs left. Let's see what we get.
But I want to do a soft challenge to you, see if you can play it with your Sylvan deck, because Sylvans should be able to beat this, but I think if you've never played it, you should. Okay. You owe it to yourself to try it.
No, I have not played it.
Are equipped to actually take Guldur.
So I will take that challenge. Is it when I play it? Should I play it solo? Is that what you're asking me? Is that the soft challenge? Okay, yeah. I will see if I can do it, because my Sylvan deck is actually almost all Sylvans in it. There's not anything like there's nothing that's not a Sylvan card in it.
Automatically, it should be perfectly suited for this quest, right?
Right. Yeah. I can imagine that's exactly what's not going to happen just from knowing the game is, like I'm just not going to happen. Although I don't know if anybody knows, but recent news is I just beat Under the Ash Mountains with my Sylvan deck. I don't know if I got lucky or if I probably missed 7 triggers but I was able to beat it with the Sylvan deck. So that was exciting. So challenge here. I'll throw down the gauntlet here, and I will accept your challenge, and I'll post a playthrough of me playing the Sylvans because of this through Dol Guldur. It'll be the shortest playthrough I've ever posted.
I just want to see if you actually figure out how to win the game. That's not a slam on anybody. It's just trying to figure out what you need to accomplish to win, and when that actually happens.
It's complicated, huh? Well, you have to put enough progress on the host of the Galadrim, right? And then you have to, I don't know. There's
our win felt like, I wouldn't have known to do that. In the timing window that the enemy zeroes out and the building doesn't regenerate its tokens. Yeah. That the host died. When we did that, I was like, does that check out? And everybody looked, and it checked out, and that was a pocket raid pointing that at a warden of Arnor. He said, no, it works like this.
Most people read it, and the way they read it, the straightforward reading of it is you never actually win.
Which is believable.
People don't ever get to that point, so it doesn't matter. But if you actually want to win, you have to do some heavy-duty decoding. I think we could have actually won the turn before. Yeah. We wouldn't have had to play that last turn. Because we had it at 0, but everybody thought it would rebuild, but it wouldn't if they could have killed their boss. I don't know where everybody was with their boss, but I think they could have killed it, and it would have been over. And if they had killed it, they would have gone to the victory display and not come back next turn. But even with the most committed players in the game, nobody knows why I'm working. I'm getting worked up.
I think Caleb needs to rot of that card just to make it clearer for the players.
Errata never makes things clearer. It just makes things harder. You should know that now.
Yeah, I should.
Huh. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you for coming out and talking about this. Joseph, it seems like you have a lot of content on your own podcast about this, and then because you and Ryan both were in the same room and you guys were playing along, so you've been talking about this for weeks, it seems like now. So I appreciate you guys.
We did both those quests kind of side by side, so it was kind of fun.
Yeah. And Shane, of course, it's always good to have somebody who is freshly inaugurated in the community and their point of view on the show. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks. I was really happy to be here.
Yeah, and Mike, Wandering Took, it's always great to have such a veteran player. First show you've been on, but we need to get you back on a normal show and talk about a card at some point. So.
Oh, for sure. This is a blast, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. So join us again, and maybe we will talk about more cards from the game next time. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.
Of course.